the only good thing that came out of COVID was the fact that parents started paying attention to what was in their kids' curriculum. That's when we really saw people start to write about critical race theory. And an extension of that is radical gender theory. If you had asked me 5 years ago, if I'd been talking about cultural Marxism, I'd say, Charles, you're an extremist. But now, looking back at what's happened over the last 5 years, we've seen a full-scale attack on our way of life, on Western conservative values, things around race, religion, our language, our history, our gender is coming under attack because these Marxists, these cultural Marxists, are trying to tear down these very important mores in Western society. And one of those is gender. And that's where I and my organization has to stand up and say, no, enough of this.
Now, it's time for some sanity. It's the Michele Tafoya podcast.
Well, Charles Moran is the president of Log Cabin Republicans. This is a group of gay Republicans, LGBT. They stop there. They don't add all the other letters. But they are a really common sense group of Republicans. And this group is, it seems to be growing in numbers that might be surprising to you. And we're going to find out why. We're going to find out what it is about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz that this community of LGBT men and women don't like, and what they do like about Donald Trump. And some of this is really enlightening, and it may surprise you. Charles Moran is our guest next. Charles Moran, great to meet you. I love introducing my audience to someone that I have never met before either, because we learn together, and I get really excited about that. Before we get too deep into what's at stake in this election, which is so much, can you give listeners who don't really know what Log Cabin Republicans is just a brief tutorial?
Sure. Log Cabin Republicans is the nation's oldest and largest organization of LGBT conservatives and Republicans. We're almost 50 years old. We were formed at the behest of then Governor Ronald Reagan back during the era of the Briggs Initiative. And the organization has nearly 80 chapters in 40 states. We have a headquarters in Washington, D.C., but we're a grassroots organization. And we have been at the forefront of, really finding a common space and, between the LGBT community and the Republican Party and the larger conservative movement. And we exist at that intersection.
If people were listening closely, they noticed you didn't include the Q and the plus at the end of LGBT. And I would imagine there's a reason for that. What is it?
The first four letters pretty much includes everyone. It's not hard. If you're L, G, B, or T, all the other letters kind of fall in with that. And again, this just falls into the intersectional Olympics that the left continues to push, because we know that, the way they maintain control and grip is just by pitting one group against the other, victimhood against another. We thoroughly reject that. Ronald Reagan, again, had one of the best lines, 80% my friend is not 20% my enemy. We really focus in on that 80% being our friend, instead of the, looking at the things that divide us as Americans. So, and we've really experienced a lot of growth and success with that when we really, change our mindset.
It's interesting. I think most people equate gay rights and the interests of the LGBTQ, whatever you want to call it, community, as being best represented by Democrats. But I'm seeing and learning more and more about your organization and others that suggest that's not the case. Why is there this sort of misunderstanding, or is there a division in your community about what political values you embrace?
Well, America is the best place in the world to be gay. We have the most freedom. We have the most equality. I think America is the best place in the world for anybody to live. And I think that's why so many people want to come here. But for gays and lesbians, and, we'll dispense with the alphabet soup and just condense things to gays and lesbians, that what I'm referring to. This is just this country is so unique because we want to uplift all people. And again, I think there was a real watershed moment in 2016 when Donald Trump got elected, because by that point, gay marriage had been codified by the Supreme Court, and then also now passed into law by the U.S. Congress. gays could serve openly in the military. You couldn't be fired for being gay in most places. There's obviously still a few skirmishes here or there that we need to, that we're still striving for. But for all intents and purposes, the battle had been won. And I think what happened was, the broader, center left community, including what we call Gay Inc. That's the professional, homosexual class. Especially here in DC, they all got behind Hillary Clinton. And of course, the vitriol just got jacked up so bad in that election to the point where people were like, you can't keep running around and Chicken Littling, the sky is falling every day. And they realized, Donald Trump has got a long history, as a philanthropist and as a businessman of supporting gay rights and gay equality issues. And then as president of the United States, he really actually fulfilled on that, had a domestic policy agenda that supported the lives not only of all Americans, but LGBT Americans, and average gays and lesbians saw that they didn't have to be, so scared that the left, continued to use that fear tactic. And and then also the Trump campaign in 2020 really did invest, and they did with work, with groups like mine, Log Cabin Republicans, where that year, we raised money to do the first ever LGBT engagement plan on behalf of the Trump campaign, and it was wildly successful. We doubled the gay vote in 2020 from 14% to 28%. It was probably closer in the low 30s, quite honestly. And even our polling today shows us, especially earlier this year, that that gay support for Trump has not slid backwards. In fact, it's only increased, and we think that we can actually get that share of the vote up into the low 40s. And of course, President Trump was like, "I want 50% of the gays voting for me this time," and so that's what we're shooting for. But it's a possibility. And for the first time, looking at gay voters, there's the polling indicates that more than half of the community is actually willing to vote and cast their vote for a candidate based on things other than gay rights issues. So it shows that this community is no longer a single issue voter. Right. And that shows a lot of maturity and progress. So, Democrats cannot take that for granted. And if you look, that provides an opening for Republicans, because if you sit there and talk about the economy and the border, our wars going on overseas, the Republicans have a much better platform for empowering everyone, including the community. And for the first time, the community is really willing to sit and actually listen to that.
And Trump's wife, former First Lady Melania Trump, it seems to me, has always been an ally to the LGBT community. She recently spoke to your group. What is that connection like?
Mrs. Trump has been a huge supporter of ours for a number of years. She's done a handful of events for us, including in 2021 when we honored her with our annual Spirit of Lincoln Award. We're just so thankful that she has, she's a modern woman who is, she herself as being a businesswoman, being an international supermodel, on her own, standing alone from, her time with President Trump. She is very thoughtful. She's very smart. She understands that we need unity in this country, and through unity will come success. And that's really, when we talk about a larger Trump unity campaign, bringing all of these, LGBT people coming together, center-right gays, disaffected Democrats, independents. We're doing a really hard push for some of the Bobby Kennedy folks. And working with the Gays for Kennedy group, just to really build out that coalition. But Mrs. Trump has done a lot. But I also don't want to discount the work of the other members of the Trump family. Other than Barron, who literally just turned 18, every member of the Trump family has actually done something for our coalition or our organization. President Trump had a great opportunity, spoke to 2 of our events, and has called into a few of our things. Melania obviously done a few things. Kimberly Guilfoyle has spoken at a few of our events. She and Don Jr. are headlining an event this weekend in Nashville. We have a great, relationship with Eric. Trump has helped us. Don Jr. has stood up for us in places like Texas, where the party has not evolved to the way it needs to. Laura Trump kicked off the Trump Pride Coalition events in 2020. And even then, even people like, Tiffany Trump came to a number of events. Even Donald Trump's ex-wives have gotten into this. Marla Maples has come to a few of our things as well. The whole family, and then obviously Jared and Ivanka have been very supportive, in working on the government side when they were in office on some of our issues, which was very thankful. So on the policy side, so campaign, policy, fundraising, political support, every person in the Trump family has been there to support our coalition, our movement. This is unlike anything that has existed in Republican politics before.
It's so interesting. We really have seen a shift. You wrote a really, I thought, solid piece for Newsweek recently, and I just want to go through it with you. You know what is a huge problem for people these days? Sleeping. And I know I have that same issue. My schedule, responsibilities, my recent shoulder surgery. I do have problems sleeping, but I found something to help me sleep better. And it's not a drug. It's not a prescription. It's a cream. Okay, stay with me. I put this cream on at bedtime. It's simple. I was really skeptical, but the first time I tried it, I was amazed that it really works and I sleep great. Okay, so the company is Sleep Cream. And they use all natural CBD combined with the finest essential oils. The stuff smells really good. I just rub it on before turning in for the evening. Bottoms of my feet, inside of my forearms. You want to use those sort of delicate skin areas. And within minutes, I am relaxed. My body is chill and I'm able to sleep. You can find them at sleepcream.com, and that's CREME. Just try Sleep Cream for a couple nights. See if it works for you as well as it does for me. If you don't experience better sleep, Sleep Cream will refund your purchase, guaranteed. You don't have to return anything. Go to sleepcream.com. That's sleepcream.com with CREME. That's how you spell cream.com. And for the next few weeks, use the code GAMEDAY at checkout to save $20 off your first order. That's GAMEDAY, all one term, at checkout, $20 savings. Are you ready for your best sleep ever? Sleep, CREME.com, sleepcream.com. It's so interesting. We really have seen a shift. You wrote a really, I thought, solid piece for Newsweek recently, and I just want to go through it with you because you are president of this very important organization, and I think one that probably Kamala Harris wishes was on her side, except that you are the log cabin Republicans.
Right.
So, it wouldn't be. But you say, as president of an organization representing millions of LGBT conservatives and their allies, I have a warning. Don't be fooled by Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's attempt to reinvent themselves as moderate, pro-family, air quotes, not weird Democrats who simply stand for LGBT equality. And you go on about their agenda. Let's just start with Title IX.
Right.
Kamala Harris really was part of this push to include gender identity in Title IX. So this Title IX was written so that women could have equal access to resources in schools and universities, have access to sports. And suddenly we're supposed to just say, biological men, it's redundant, who are now trans women should have the right to compete against women. To me, it's insanity. And so how have you looked at that whole issue?
So, over the last couple of years, we've been really trying to get our heads around the messaging on this because, again, we consider ourselves very common sense conservatives, and we think that most Americans are commonsensical. And, when we saw legislation moving in different states to try to address these issues piecemeal, we realized that we needed to come up with something a little bit more comprehensive, bring the conversation up to, the 60,000 foot view to provide conservatives a way to message around this. And the way we talk about it is that we believe firmly that 80% of this country is supportive of equality and rights and dignity for the L's, the G's, the B's, and the T's. But that comes with some guardrails and some real responsibilities. First, no men and women's spaces, protecting women's sports in Title IX, parental consent at every level, and finally, no permanent gender transition under the age of 18. These are very common sense. I don't call it moderate. I don't call it centrist. This is common sense. This is where I believe 80% of the country is. But you've got 10% on the far left and 10% on the far right that are going to argue and litigate this ad nauseum. And it's usually done to fulfill either a special agenda or demanding fundraising requirements. And the problem is that we as conservatives get labeled as being mean-spirited or bigoted or racist or homophobic. I mean, like, you know, the left likes to name call like nobody else.
Right.
But when you really present this in a very common sense kind of way, you know, the left has been trying to push the envelope in so many things. And we saw it, you know, the only good thing that came out of COVID was the fact that parents started paying attention to what was in their kids' curriculum. That's when we really saw people start to write about critical race theory. And an extension of that is radical gender theory. You know, if you had asked me 5 years ago, you know, if I'd been talking about cultural Marxism, I'd say, Charles, you're an extremist. But now looking back at what's happened over the last 5 years, coming out of COVID, watching what schools have been doing insidiously through curriculum, and then watching the Biden administration put their foot on the gas with this, we've seen a full-scale attack on our way of life, on Western conservative values, things around race, religion, our language, our history, our gender is coming under attack because these Marxists, these cultural Marxists, are trying to tear down these very important mores in Western society. And one of those is gender. And that's where I and my organization has to stand up and say, no, enough of this. It's not enough for Christians just to stand up and say, you will not demonize our religion. It's not just about, you know, people from one ethnic background or another coming back up, or, you know, watching what they did to, you know, the language, Latinx. Like, these are not words. So you can see this as part of an arc and a narrative of trying to recreate language, recreate race. Now they're trying to recreate gender. This is where I have to stand up as a committed conservative who's an openly proud gay American and a strong conservative Republican and say, you will not destroy our gender, and you will not try to conflate your radical gender theory with the gay rights movement.
Right.
And that distinction is so critical. And, you know, I'm so thankful to have the time to talk to you today because I can kind of expound on this. It's hard to do this in 20-second sound bites.
Yeah.
But it's critical that people understand. And in common sense, gay people are like, look, I'm a man and I like men, or, you know, lesbians, they're a woman who likes a woman. Like, this is not, there's nothing radical about any kind of agenda around that.
Yeah.
We want to fit into society. You know, I tell people, I believe in conservative family values, but that includes my family too. Yeah. And there is a place big enough in our conservative tent for all of us. And, you know, it's wild, but we have to make these distinctions to the gay community for them to understand that they don't have to buy into the Marxist nonsense, but also communicate to conservatives that we are not a threat and we together are stronger trying to advance a conservative majority in this country.
Are you familiar with Jillian Michaels?
Love her.
Yes.
Love everything
fitness
about
guru.
her.
Yeah, she's just a wonderful woman, beautiful woman, lesbian, she calls herself a former lefty, but she says, you know, this is going to sound trite, but the left me.
Right.
And I think she has articulated this view that the extremes are so far gone. How can we stand by what these policies that they're putting forth? And you talk a lot about kids and family. Mm-hmm. And it seems to, I saw a clip from an article recently that said maybe the best way is for the state to really, you know, lead our kids. No. Separating parents from the equation. And some parents are giving into this, Charles, and I don't quite understand why. Maybe they aren't confident in their approach to parenthood, but it's really about two things: love and discipline, and you know, setting standards and all the rest. And this idea that anyone from the outside, particularly from government, should come in and have a hand in your child's upbringing. We've seen, you talked about COVID. We've seen how the public schools have just disintegrated, how they've really gone downhill. That's the one thing that we really entrusted our government to do, was to educate our kids in public schools. and they are failing. Here in Minnesota, 50% of our kids cannot read at grade level. They cannot do math at grade level. 50%, Charles, under Tim Walz. So you write that Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, it's the wrong choice for LGBT Americans. I think it's the wrong choice for all Americans, but there are a lot of people who are behind them.
Right. And we just have to make sure that we're consistently beating this drum that people know that they should not be fooled by the rhetoric coming out from the Harris-Walz campaign. Again, they are promoting radical gender theory. They are trying to, take away control from parents to make the decisions. And again, I've got, even before we even weighted down this subject a couple of years ago, like I called gay parents in our organizations who, benefited from things like IVF, just saying like, where are you on this? And they said, we don't want the state dictating the morals and values that our children are taught. That's our job as parents. Mm-hmm. So again, the left will continue to demonize this. They've also hooked all the reproductive freedom and reproductive rights into this too. I mean, again, this is intersectionality. This is the linked victimhood that exists through all of this, that, gay rights are reproductive rights, are immigrant rights, are indigenous people's rights. It's all linked together for them. And you can't, if you don't have one, you don't have all. And the struggle of one is the struggle for all. We as conservatives just fundamentally reject that. Yeah. So like that's where they are. And somebody's got to be that, now not so silent minority, and a growing minority of voices standing up to these radical leftists, because it has to happen.
And when we talk radical, I think chopping off a child's body part is radical. Mm-hmm. And, you hear, and there are people within the media who will say, but don't you want your child to be happy? Are you feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance? Have you had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars? Introducing ShareRight, healthcare done the right way. At ShareRight, you're not just a number, you're part of a caring community. And forget about paying excessive premiums. With ShareRight, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. Think about what you could do with all those savings. My goodness, but it's more than just savings. ShareRight ensures that you have access to the care you deserve precisely when you need it, from routine checkups to unexpected emergencies. With ShareRight, your healthcare is their top priority. So empower yourself today by taking control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Tafoya, Tafoya, to learn more and see how much you can save. Visit shareright.org/Tafoya. That's shareright.org/Tafoya for healthcare done the right way. Well, my kid tells me that the way to make her happy is if she just eats sugar 24/7. Am I going to let her do that? No, I'm not. Her brain's not fully developed. It's my responsibility. So this idea that a child can come to you at the age of 7, 8, 9 years old and say, I feel like I'm in the wrong body. Okay, let's go get you some medicine and cut these things off, is to me such an extreme response without going through, you know what? Let's get some talk therapy. Let's talk to some specialists, and let's not get pushed into this because you're 8 and you might change your mind in a few weeks.
I'm lucky that I've not ever been in that position where I've questioned my gender identity. And I respect those who have had to go through that struggle in whatever way. I've got some amazing friends in my life that are trans. We've got some amazing spokespeople on our side who are too. People like Caitlyn Jenner, Sophia Hutchins, Blair White. I mean, we've got some amazing conservative voices who are trans. And one of the main differences I see with them versus, the ones on the left is they just want to fit into society. They're not expecting society to bend its knee to them.
Right. And
there's a level of respect that comes with that. And President Trump, we are where he is on this. Like, look, if you're 18 or older, you get to make a decision based on what is good for you. And we, the state or the public, don't get to have a say in that. Again, if you're under 18, we have some guidelines and some guardrails around that.
Yeah.
But if you're over 18, this is your choice. And, the concept of these teachers who are, indoctrinating students and the whole, if you don't use my pronouns correctly, it's a hate crime.
Right.
Again, this is the thought police. It's the language police. This is exactly what the Marxists do. And they're going after the most vulnerable people in our society. And especially with kids at young ages who are craving attention, don't know how to fit in their peers. They're dealing with raging hormones, growing and developing bodies, in a society that is oversexed and overexposed to content to begin with. This is just it's a real awakening for people to reintroduce some values. And those values don't have to be exclusive. Like I said, we believe in traditional family values, but that includes our families too. So you can be supportive of traditional cultural mores in society that doesn't exclude gays and lesbians. And that's just, again, that's the intersection we live at, and we tell our stories. And you'll find members of log cabin Republicans at elected office, top to bottom. You'll see us participate in the party. You'll see us participate in church and civic organizations. We don't isolate ourselves. We tell people, go out into your communities and be involved, because that's the best way to get to know a gay is to participate in your broader community. And that's how we change hearts and minds.
Yeah. I like to ask people what gives them hope in this day and age where so many of us are losing sleep at night, wake up in the morning and go, good God, what's going to happen today? Which is basically describes me, to be honest, Charles. I try to sleep. I try to, but there's so much on my mind. And we detail all of these issues that we're constantly battling. So what gives you hope that we can right this ship, that we're always going to have extremists, right?
Right.
But that we give this massive, bigger voice to those of us, this vast chunk in the middle who are common sense people.
Donald Trump has single-handedly reoriented the Republican Party and the conservative movement back into its original direction. Veering out of gayland for a minute, again, my day job politically before taking over Log Cabin Republicans was I was a GOP fundraiser in California for my career. So I have visibility on the trends and the motions of the party. I was a Republican before Donald Trump. I'll be one after Donald Trump. Donald Trump really has displaced, in the MAGA America First movement, has displaced three fairly significant communities that have been dominating the Republican Party for the last couple of decades. The first one is hardline social conservatives, the people who want to continue to fight abortion, gay marriage, some of these issues ad nauseum. Globalists, so the people who are, free markets with no borders, cheap labor, and then the neocons. So that's the drop bombs first, ask questions later, military industrial complex, always going to war. Somebody's got to finance that. So you've got the economic globalists, hardline social conservatives, and the war machine. And these three groups have had a grip on the Republican Party for many, many decades. Donald Trump has sufficiently come in and said, look, I'm going to be a different type of person because the Republican Party in America is in a different place. I mean, this is somebody who went through his entire administration without starting a war, which means didn't need to buy more bombs. And he re-equipped our military, so we had a very well-equipped military. But again, peace through strength, using economic levers before using military levels first, kept our people safe and implemented American policies abroad. Locking down the borders, onshoring and repatriating corporations that were hiding out in Ireland and other countries, Barbados or whatever, getting that money and that those companies moving back to America by helping make it more competitive for businesses to compete here, but by also establishing guidelines that, if you do business here, you're going to be paying tax here. And then finally saying, again, and he walked this line so well with social conservatives because, he is committedly pro-life. He did put in some of the most, constitutional, conservative justices, not only on the Supreme Court, but at the lower court level too, earn that trust in society, but also said, I'm not going to continue to play the wars where we beat the gays, and we're going to consistently lean into the social wars, because we need to talk about what unites us as a country. And him coming from New York and being exposed to so many different people and being so international just gives him that mindset of inclusion, and, you know, more people means more benefit for all. So that is how Donald Trump has phenomenally restructured the entire Republican Party and the conservative movement. You saw that even with like the new adoption of the platform of the Republican Party in in July. That is his lasting legacy. He must win this time, because that is a winning legacy for a modern America, for a modern Republican Party. And if he does not win, you know, those, you know, the never Trumpers and the globalists and the warmongers are going to slide right back in and take control. So I think about, I mean, obviously what's at stake for me, for our country, but for our party as well and our movement, because I don't want all of this to be lost.
Yeah.
And I think that average Americans can look back and remember just short 4 years ago, and remember even during COVID, gas was cheap, groceries were cheaper, and people really felt like they had a fighter for them in the White House. And right now, what's in there is just literally nobody is running the ship right now. Joe Biden, ever since he got thrown off their platform for president, he has been literally out to lunch, hasn't really come back.
Oh, but he did The View this week.
You know, it's just, the time for the important things. Sitting there and talking to Joy and to Whoopi. But I think Americans can see back and have a fond memory just 4 short years ago about how much things were better. And they look at Kamala Harris. I'm from California. I've been dealing with Kamala Harris since 2010, when she first ran for state office. I ran a race against her that year. My candidate for attorney general lost by 1/9 of 1 percentage point. If we had won that year, things may have been very different.
Very different on so many levels. Goodness sakes. Well, Charles, I wish you well. And you have a supporter in me. I'm not going to be shy about saying that. I dread to think of what would happen if this empty vessel, this woman who blows bubbles of vacuity, as my friend Jerry Butler of the Wall Street Journal says, I'm fear for the country and what would happen if she and Tim Walz in particular were in office. Good God. Best to you. I hope to have you again. I hope to have you after the election. We can talk about how we're going to move forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you. He is Charles Moran. Folks, I always end my episodes by saying be brave and do good. Find a way to use your courage today in any small way, and just do one like tiny little good deed, even if it's like, just saying hi to the mailman. And we'll see you next time.